do you think that the role of the radiologist should be taken over, or do you think that the role of the AI should be used in tandem with the expertise of a radiologist?
Generally, I don't think that robots should be taking over any job in the tertiary sector.
Yeah.
Because those type of jobs, even with radiographers, require a degree of human consciousness or feelings like empathy with any social worker. And I don't think that a robot will be able to demonstrate that, at least not yet. And I think the point in time where they are able to is going to be a very dangerous point in time. But I think inevitably it's going to come, it's going to happen. And I think they're already trying to develop robots to have those human emotions.
Welcome all to this week's podcast. Here you're joined with myself, Joseph, and
Vihash.
Yeah, and today we're going to be diving into part 2, the segment where we will be exploring the wider impact of productivity. But just a bit of a recap on last week's episode. Last week we covered the productivity in the context of how social media can possibly impede and affect the quality of productivity that we have in our academic performance, but as well as that, journey versus destination and work-life balance. Bit of a wider context as to what we kind of did last week. We kind of focused more primarily on our personal experiences, anecdotes, quite personal to us last week. But I think this week we're going to kind of focus on particularly how productivity has an impact on the larger scale, particularly from the perspective of economics, okay, defining productivity in that sense. But as well as that, how productivity and technology can go hand in hand. And ultimately, I think Vihash and I will kind of give our future predictions in that respect as well, whether that would be from the respect of medicine, and if radiologists will possibly still have a job in 20 years' time, or even pharmacists for that matter, community pharmacists, will they still have a job? But those are very, very obscure questions we may touch on maybe possibly later in the episode. But firstly, Vihash, without going straight into it, let me ask you this. How's your day been? How are you?
I've been alright. I've been good. I think I don't really know how to answer that, but how have you been?
To be honest, I feel like I've been able to take a bit of a breather since exams are now over for myself. And I said that in last week's pod as well, but I just feel like there's a bit of a weight that's been lifted off my chest,
Yeah.
I can breathe slightly more freely, but without having to have a certain amount of weight or tug with each and every breath that I take, or, a guilty pleasure that I thought, even picking up a phone doesn't feel that bad anymore, like it once did, especially during exam season. But
no, I see what you mean. But you've said that you've got a few assignments coming up, so I guess
thank you for reminding me, Vihash. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. I mean, I'll take that back. We can move on as if nothing happened.
No, it's too late now. My heart's already gone up. There's a bit of tachycardia going on, guys, right now. My heart rate just went from normal resting heart rate of around 60 beats per minute to around 180 within the space of 20 seconds. Crazy. But nonetheless, let me ask you this, Vihash. How would you define productivity from the perspective of economics? Or as, the OECD like to describe the term productivity?
I see productivity as an equivalent to efficiency. So for people who study physics out there, we should know that physics, that efficiency is equal to useful power/energy output over the total energy input. And
Okay.
if it makes it easier to see it from that perspective, I'd say that productivity is the economic equivalent to that. So it's essentially how much the ratio between like the amount of energy you're putting into something and the useful energy that you're taking out from it. So how efficient are you in what it is you're doing, your task that you're doing? And that's a more low level definition, but I think it's still applicable to any, whether it's like a huge organization, huge companies. I think how much a company produces useful outputs relative to the amount of investment they give into it, time, energy, money. I think it's still, you can translate that definition.
No, without a doubt. I think you've described it really well, and kind of breaking it down the way that you did, phenomenal. But I think the way that the Organization for, was it Economic Cooperation and Development, they describe it as, the way that you pretty much said it, as it's ultimately a ratio, right? It's a ratio of the volume of input and the volume of output. And you've effectively described what the volume of input is. Input is broken down into several different respects. That would be the labor that's involved and the capital which is invested. And ultimately, you are trying to see the economic growth that will come out of it through the output, right? Because ultimately, productivity is what? It's a key source for economic growth. And without it, we're going to stagnate. We aren't going to develop as fast. But I feel like this then leads us then to talk a bit about UK's productivity problem. And VS, if you don't mind me asking, what's the UK's productivity kind of growth like now compared to what it was like? Because I'm pretty sure there's been a bit of a drop. Am I correct in saying that?
Whether it's a drop or not, an increase that people were expecting, I guess you could argue and have a debate about, but it's definitely behind what I think has been was predicted pre-pandemic, right? So they thought that after the pandemic, of course the pandemic brought our economic growth down a bit because everyone was working at home. Of course, you had the people who needed to work. So like, what was the term for them? Were they social workers? I think there was a specific term that's gone over my head right now. But you have social workers essentially. So like your doctors, your nurses,
key workers.
Key workers. That's the one. Yeah, that's what I meant. Your key workers, they were still going, but then of course, I guess you could say the quaternary side of jobs, so like research and development, those that sector had like a drop off because they were working from home, so they weren't in their usual work environment. So I don't know if that made them less productive working at home compared to at work. And I think we could probably talk a bit about that now, whether the pandemic had a huge impact, because
100%,
generally speaking, I think in order for the UK and for any country to grow, they need a good quaternary sector. And by quaternary, I mean research, development. If you're investing a lot into that, then you're going to get a lot back as well, because if you have a good foundation in research and development, then I think your economic growth is going to increase in its rate. And so would you say that in that case, would you say that the pandemic was a huge factor in slowing the growth of slowing the economic growth in the UK?
I think it definitely played a factor, because you imagine, no one's using public transport. Like, we have the healthcare services, which has been pushed to its limits, and beyond its limits for that matter. But as well as that, you have now people working from home now. They aren't utilizing or buying stuff from outside anymore. That ability to then, as in, when I say going out to purchase things outside, it's more from the social context rather than from the perspective of the need context, where we were actually going out there to buy stuff from. So where we would see, only essential shops open, right? Like you have your Asda's, your Sainsbury's, right? People would only go there to buy what they needed, but not buy, not, let's say, you could want something, but you could need something, right? And people needed
Yeah.
stuff during COVID over the
Yes.
fact that they wanted stuff. So say you could want to go clothes shopping, you could want to have something nice to eat while you're outside. But I think it's a whole nother issue once we start to speak about, what was it? The schemes Rishi Sunak as Chancellor introduced. It was, I believe one of them was something like he was really encouraging people to eat out. I can't remember what it was from the top of my head, but he was really pretty much a driving factor. I think this was a year after COVID had hit. Rishi Sunak was really pushing a lot of the population to go out more, to eat more. There was a lot of discounts he was offering as well as a result of that.
Okay.
But I think we can see the impact that it's had on the leisure aspect
Yeah.
of the economy. Services in particular, like you have had with restaurants, swimming pools being shut. There's too many to think of from the top of my head
So
right now.
yeah, I mean if I go back to the Eat Out scheme that you
That's it. That's the Eat Out scheme. That's it.
yeah, the Eat Out scheme, it was rolled up it was an initiative to improve the how do I say it? To improve the customer base for pubs and restaurants that had all been hit hard during the pandemic, of course, because people weren't going out during the pandemic. And so I think he decided to tell everyone, I think understandably so, to start eating out to help these pubs and restaurants. And then I think people started to develop this initiative, and they thought, okay, even if I'm spending 20 to 30, at least I'm helping a service that has not been able to grow during the pandemic. So I'm doing a good deed. So I think it was a good initiative to put up, because it helped these, even the smaller businesses, like the like the pub down the road, or like the shop down the road that hadn't been selling as much. Because during the pandemic, people would only buy what they need. Like there was a huge demand for toilet paper. You remember there were queues outside for toilet paper
crisis. Oh my god, I remember that.
People were. I've seen so many viral videos. In fact, no, I just had a passing thought. Should we watch one right now? But there's been too many to count. There's a number of viral videos of people fighting over toilet paper.
Yeah. So it was called, was it Eat Out to Help Out, wasn't it? That was like the slogan that they'd had. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I'd also, I'd also remember that there was a big push on wanting to help local businesses, and also, with like what you just said, really big push to help those people out, because we had Rishi Sunak, do the furlough scheme, for people to now, be able to support themselves with something, because they weren't ultimately working. They were laid off technically for a significant amount of time. But as well as that, I just want to kind of throw a few statistics into the air as well. Well, particularly in the context of productivity. So between 1974 till 2008, the UK's productivity increased at an average annual rate of 2.3%. However, from 2008 till 2020, well, it's kind of difficult to say because this only goes up to 2020. The UK's growth stagnated. Well, UK's growth of productivity stagnated at an increased annual average rate of 0.5%. Why do you think that is? Disregarding COVID, just for a moment.
Yeah, so I was just about to say, we have already said the pandemic, but the only other reason I could think of off the top of my head is whether the development of technology. So you said, you said 2000 to 2020, was it?
2008 to 2020, yeah.
2008 to 2020. So that, I guess you could say, although technology was definitely around before 2008, of course, it probably exponentiated in that time period. I'm talking about in terms of the jobs, right? So not just, it could be globalization. So increased globalization, maybe more dependent on technology.
Yeah.
So maybe it had some impact on the productivity of the labor workforce, anything like that. So would you say, since technology has taken over, and we'll get into that in a bit, whether it actually has taken over, but would you say that because technology has increased at an exponential rate, that has had a huge impact on slowing our economic growth?
Oh, it's difficult to say because you can't really measure the impact of technology, or it's incredibly difficult to measure the impact of technology. Because you imagine, if I give you an example like this, Vihash, if you ran a multi-million pound call center business and you outsourced all your calls back to India, hypothetically, back to India, for example, and you are employing a lot of people from that region, to now measure the productivity of your company, which is based in the UK, but you're outsourcing a lot of your services in a different country. It's difficult to measure that sort of thing. But as well as that, you've got to think of it from the regard of like, I feel like our economic revolutions in general, just to put it simply, they take very long. They are very long in duration. So we're looking at it from 34 years. However, we're looking now at a sample of an increase between 2008 to 2020. That's 12 years. Now, I don't know if that's a factor, but I think that's still something that we still need to take into account, because of course some years between 1974 till 2008 are going to have had more would have been significantly better. But between 2008 to 2020, it might not necessarily have had the opportunity to have that sort of spikes that overall average. All I'm just trying to get back at is the overall average. You have a larger sample size between 1974 to 2008. However, till 2008 to 2020, you just don't. But that's the kind of perspective I'm trying to look at it from.
Okay. Let's talk about then what type. I mean, we know that technology is, of course, we talked previously. It does help us, but that's on a really individual. Would you say that technology has impacted specific sectors or specific types of jobs as a whole in the UK, and that's the reason why we might not be as productive as other countries, or is it just, and do you think it's like an overall impact? So do you think it's affected each and every one of the jobs? So if I were to go into these sectors, so you've got the primary sector, secondary and tertiary and quaternary. Primary being the collection of resources, so farming would be an example. Secondary would be manufacturing, goods, transportation, and tertiary would be service-based jobs, and quaternary research-based jobs. So based on that, would you say which one of those sectors do you think it's impacted the most?
So I'd say primary, particularly how you have had with the huge impact in farming and agriculture, right? I feel like there's a huge strain on farmers now more than ever before to create this huge level of output, but also being undermined with respect to the workforce that these people usually are dealing with, and the kind of land that they are also dealing with as well. Therefore, the implementation of technology like the use of tractors, like the use of drones, and when I think back to drones, these drones are now equipped with state-of-the-art equipment like we have with pesticides and sprays and all sorts of different forms of technology that you have whizzing across acres of land to kill these pests ultimately, which ultimately will then prevent it directly affecting crops and therefore producing a more effective yield and better profits, right?
Yes, I agree, and I want to ask you, do you think that it's a bad thing that technology like this is replacing these otherwise laborious jobs?
Yeah. Now I could think of it in two respects, So if I think of it from the perspective that it is a bad thing, because ultimately it's inhibiting someone from making a living who might have not, let's say necessarily, okay, now of course everybody requires academic qualifications, but not some academic qualifications may be, automated, right? And that's a form of automation. But I think low skill driven tasks require less thought but more automation behind it. Therefore, jobs in manufacturing are more at risk and more prone to it then being taken over by technology. And because of that, it's ultimately going to reduce the labor force and increase in the amount of technology which is used, which will ultimately improve efficiency, improve profits, and I guess improve the overall well-being of workers who are already there. Because now you're dealing with it on a more effective and efficient scale. But the problem and the downside of this is that this has a direct impact on laborers who want to earn a living, but may not necessarily have the qualifications and skills to maybe progress from that point, but would prefer to stay at that particular job. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's more of a skill-based requirement. And although their skill-based requirements are met directly with another piece of technology, is that a good thing, as in with respect to technology taking over their role? No, I don't think personally it's a good thing at the moment. I think it should be used in tandem, right? I think it should be used as a tool to only help us, but not take over our jobs. Does that make sense?
100%.
Yeah.
And I'm going to add to that as well, because I think with an increase in automation behind these jobs in the primary and secondary sectors, you have huge companies. I remember doing a bit of geography on this a couple of years back, and what it means is that they're more reliant. These agricultural companies, if you like, they're more reliant because they're using technology to automate their jobs. So that means that they're producing more. And they're able to sell more, of course, and they have better quality. Now, I guess you could go into the whole GM crops things and whether people actually prefer GM crops or organic foods. But that means that you've got when you outsource, so when you import food from other countries, such as Africa, such as Asia, such as South America, when you import food from there, that's all been produced from labor. So those countries are less likely to use, or they're less likely to invest in technology over taking over their jobs. And that means that because we're more reliant on these successful businesses and successful companies that are able to produce a lot more and better quality, it puts them out of jobs, and they're not able to make a living. Like you said, an example of this would be, I think it's in Kenya, where because Kenya are trying to keep up with the same demand, with the demand that countries like the UK have for green beans in particular, they're not able to produce enough for themselves now. So they're trying to compete with big companies here in the UK itself, which are producing 10-20 times more than what they are producing. And because they're trying to keep up with that competition, they're compensating that for their own hunger, if you like, or their own lack of food. So they're not able to produce for themselves. So it's not a good thing in that respect. It's beneficial for whoever's importing the food into their country, yes, and it keeps the costs down if you have labor dependent jobs like that from other countries, and it keeps them labor intensive, that's the one, from other countries. So yes, I agree with you.
No, without a doubt, I liked it. Yeah, that's really good, the way that you've kind of look at it like a different angle, where you focus on the perspective of implementing technology in, I guess, maybe you've mentioned continents, let me just bear that in mind, but within those continents are going to be less developed countries, and in those less developed countries we are ultimately going to have countries which you say, well, you kind of generalize the term, may not substitute technology for the workforce, but can they even do that in the first place? Are they even in the position to invest in the technology? And are they even stable enough to be like, okay, let's put money here, let's put money there? Do they have bigger issues at hand? Are they dealing with drug cartels? Like, I'm not going to mention any countries right now. Maybe sometime down the line we're going to
No.
go into drug cartels, all that sort of businesses. But they could be dealing with a lot more like prevalent and more outstanding issues, and rather not focus on productivity like we are in more developed countries. This is more like a first world issue, right?
Yes, I mean countries like those are more dependent on their primary and secondary and tertiary sectors more than their quaternary. And bear in mind, the quaternary sector is what causes economic growth in the first place. If you're able to invest a lot more money into your quaternary sector, so researching, whether that be medical research, so science, or things like that, if you're able to put aside and invest money into that, then it's going to increase your economic growth. But because these countries don't have the money in the first place, they're just really dependent on their primary and secondary sectors, and I guess you could say they're being I guess you could go as far to say that they're being exploited for that by other countries, by these big,
what was it, the Fairtrade scheme or something?
Yes,
like I feel like that's just a marketing stunt. It's very controversial. I just feel like it's a marketing stunt to justify reasons why supermarkets should get more profits over the fact that they are distributing profits equally across the chain of supply. Is what I'm saying correct? Because I believe they have increased their wages through purchasing through fair trade products. You're ultimately helping them, and they're a lot better than, I guess, other products because they say that they're fair trade. But again, I think it's one of those things where it just kind of plays into our feeling when we kind of buy product, because then we now have a conscientious or a motivation when we buy it. Maybe a product slightly more to premium. These bananas are fair trade. These bananas aren't fair trade. Which banana should I buy? Well, either or, to be honest. But to be honest, if you want the people across the supply chain to get a fair distribution, then I guess fair trade. But then again, if you've got bananas worth £2, and please don't take my, and you've got supermarkets taking like 60% of profits, like.
Yes, I mean there's I think fair trade is like an excuse for these big companies to present food to you as if it's as if the profit from that food is going back to the farmers, when I think in the first place you could just buy organic and ensure that 100% of your money is going towards those farmers in the first place, rather than sort of buy into these big companies like Fairtrade and assume that 1%, maybe 10% at most is going back to these farmers from abroad.
I just want to have a look at how much profit did Sainsbury's make during COVID. Now, of course, we're not taking into the fact that they've made a ludicrous amount. We're going to have to go into it some other time, but it's just crazy to think that you have the big players and then you have everybody else in the supply chain who are affected. But there's something that I kind of really want to touch on upon the question that you asked me earlier, Vihash. And this is particularly with respect to, and I'd really like to hear your take on this, with respect to using technology in tandem in your place of work. And when I say in your place of work, let's say you're working as a doctor, Vihash, right? Do you think the role as a doctor will be taken over? Okay, let's say radiologist, for example. The role of radiologist, for example, to screen X-rays, MRI, CT, so on and so forth. Their jobs does require an incredibly expert level of expert knowledge behind the subjects, of course. There's a lot that I'm not mentioning about the role of radiologist. But just to put it simply, with that respect of just AI being able to interpret these scans and images more effectively than the average radiologist, right? Do you think that the role of the radiologist should be taken over, or do you think that the role of the AI should be used in tandem with the expertise of a radiologist?
Generally, I don't think that robots should be taking over any job in the tertiary sector. Because those type of jobs, even with radiographers, require a degree of human consciousness or feelings like empathy with any social worker. And I don't think that's a robot will be able to demonstrate that, at least not yet. And I think the point in time where they are able to is going to be a very dangerous point in time. I'm not looking forward to it, but I think inevitably it's going to come. It's going to happen, and I think they're already trying to develop robots to have those human emotions inside of them. So generally, and I think this is I'm being influenced here by a BBC article that I saw, and it, to put it bluntly, the title was "Will Robots Be Taking Over Our Jobs?" And as controversial as it sounds, I think to an extent what they're saying is true, and it's true for mainly manufacturing, so secondary sectors, and like we said before, primary sectors, because although they do have interactive tasks, they don't necessarily, like you said, require social intelligence or a high level of a degree, for instance. They don't require any of that. It's manufacturing and processing, which can be done by robots and are already being done by robots. So if I go down, and I'll probably have this list, I'll probably screenshot it and put it in, but this list it's essentially a rank of the most likely job titles in risk of being taken over by a robot. Now, I don't know if this is true or not. I don't think it would be 100% true. But at the top of the list, you have a telephone salesperson. And I don't know if I agree with that or not.
Can you share
whether
your screen?
Telephone sales? I can share it. Yeah.
Is that all right? You can have a look at all the jobs that we think personally might even be taken over. And that is a man. There's telephone sales, like cold calls. So someone cold calls someone else, like to sell them a product.
Yes. It's exactly. So you know those calls that you get from it could be from marketing teams or anything trying to market a certain product. They could be taken over. According to this, they're most likely to be taken over.
Whoa.
Let me just see if I can do this.
Wow.
Can you see that?
Okay, I can see it all right.
All right. Yeah, so here you can see, like I said, telephone salesperson at the top. And if you keep scrolling down, you can see most of these are fairly, they're like office jobs, I guess you could say. So clerks, operators, anything like that. Those according to this are most at risk of being taken over by a robot. Like I said, I don't know how true this is.
Actually, I've got a really controversial thing to ask you, actually. Go scroll back up to sales assistant, and you know those, so like a sales assistant, someone who works around the shop floor, and like a retail assistant. What do you think, like, when you go into a shop, right? I can't lie, personally, I usually just have the focus of just wanting to get what I want and then just leave.
Yeah.
Do you get what I mean?
Yes, I do. But I mean, if I was greeted by a robot when I walked into a shop, would I like that or not? Would I, if I had to go up to a robot and ask where a certain piece of clothing is, I'd be a bit intimidated, to be fair.
Sure. Is it?
Yeah,
okay. Interesting. Okay, interesting.
There is a stigma when it comes down to these robots. I mean, after all, why do you think there are sci-fi films on robots taking over the world? So, I mean, you could go as far to say that that's influenced research into that sector, and maybe it's going down that way as well, as robots are going to. But I think that's a bit controversial to say right now.
Okay. Yeah.
But if I were to walk into a shop, I don't really think I'd want to be greeted by a robot.
Yeah. Okay, that's fair enough. It's like I think like self-service checkouts, they're really big nowadays, right?
Oh yes.
Because there's no need for a person to be at the checkout, because you can just scan the items yourself.
I think it was in one of the Sainsbury's near me, right? They've more or less completely taken out all of the checkouts that were run by actual people. And they've got this huge, because whenever I went there was always a huge queue at the self checkout areas, because people would rather self-checkout themselves, and I don't know if it's the interaction or things like that, but they would rather do the self-checkout themselves. So they cleared out all of the ones which required workers there, and they replaced it with this huge section of self-checkouts only, and they've split it now into like one for basket users or non-basket users, and one for trolley only users, which have like this huge.
I've seen that.
And they've cleared it out now.
Oh my gosh.
They have taken into account, because there is of course a danger with these. You could trick the system. People find ways to trick the system, but with this, they've also invested in upping their security. So they have like automatic gates where you have to scan the receipt now to leave, and whatnot, and you can't leave without. If you haven't bought anything, you have to take a different exit, and you have to tell someone. So they have upped the security in that sense, which is all good. But there is, I think, there's still faults in the system and still flaws in the system that need to be
lots of
addressed.
vulnerabilities. If you don't mind me jumping in, I do remember this Amazon Go, Amazon Fresh. They have 0 employees. I don't see any staff around. You walk in, you grab whatever you want, and you walk back out the shop. And do you know how they do this? They do this through like the cameras that are placed around the store. They recognize you picking up the product and putting down the product. As soon as you walk out with the product, they will deduct whatever you have taken off the shelf from your account, your registered account.
So you have to register beforehand to do that?
Yeah, of course. So Amazon Fresh, I can't remember, but they have a store in London. I know that. And it is fully automated, as in like, of course, you're going to have like a colleague there just in case. But
yes,
I feel like we are going to see more of these sorts of stores, because there is less of a need for someone to be there to direct them, when they could just literally go up to a piece of tech and for it to then direct you where it is. As in like, it could be wall mounted, and you could ask, where can I find so and so, and it will tell you where. Okay, aisle 15, rather than going up to a human and say, okay, where could I find oranges, for example. Okay. But I don't know if you heard of that.
No.
Have you?
I haven't heard of that specifically. I mean, I would have assumed that they've already developed things like that, but I haven't heard of specific examples, like especially not in the UK.
The Amazon Fresh store.
No, I haven't.
Really?
I don't really know if I wouldn't. I'll probably stay away from that, to be honest.
Really? Oh my gosh.
Would you say you prefer if everything was automated?
Now, okay, personally, looking at it from like disregarding economics and all these sorts of factors, and just for like you're going in there for a purchase, and then you're leaving, right? I like a quiet environment. Now, I don't know if I'm weird to say that, but like,
okay,
yeah, I just want to get what I need. And
personally, I would prefer if there was someone there, because then I would feel a bit more comfortable, and I wouldn't be like second guessing or questioning whether what I'm doing is the right way to go about doing something. So I'd want like someone there that I could go up to and ask, and not have like a robot voice come up to me with a series of responses that's been programmed into it.
Okay, then let me ask you like this then. Let's say it's like an Amazon Fresh store, or whatever that Amazon automated store is like, and they have like one employee just there for like electrical maintenance or the overall running of the store, and it's a fairly small store. Would you prefer that over a fairly busy store with longer queues and more staff?
Well, in terms of busyness, because you're trying to say if I prefer
I'm throwing a lot of things into this. All right,
look,
get
all
rid
I'm
of
saying.
busyness, all right. I'm
just saying if I'm assuming that Amazon Fresh store is not quiet at all, because I'm guessing there's quite a lot of people like yourself, Joseph, who prefer to go in and just
out of the equation. Focus it on the respect that there are a lot of employees, so the ratio of employees to a customer is ridiculous. Okay, in this one store, and there's only one guy who works there. Okay, and you can grab what you need and leave. That is only the respect with it. Forget about how busy it is.
I think initially I'd be a bit skeptical. I might be a bit anxious, and I wouldn't really know what it is I'm doing. But maybe if I've gotten used to it, and I've been there a couple of times, I might prefer it. I guess it's just one of those things which I have to give a go before I actually know. I'm not too sure.
Okay, I think I've found the area that's automated. Hold on. No, I can't find it. You know what?
Okay, well, I thought maybe we could have a bit of a play around with this concept, because we're addressing it from a really serious point of view. But I think at this point we can be a bit, relaxed with the whole idea.
Yeah.
So on this BBC article, they had a interactive little engine, browser, and where you could type up a job and see how likely it is. So you can already see I've already typed up farmers, and it says that it's 76% likely that a farmer's job is about to be taken over. And I mean, that's understandable.
That makes sense.
Like you said before, it doesn't require that much, as much skill. It does require a fair amount of skill, but not as much as a quaternary or tertiary based job, sector-based job. So what should we type in? Let's see.
You know what? Type in pharmacist.
I knew you'd say that.
Wait. Is there a community pharmacist option, or is it just a pharmacist option?
It says pharmacy technician or dispensing assistant.
You know what? Dispensing, they're getting taken over 100%. Go with that first, and let's go from there.
Okay. Oh, wow. 94%.
Why do you think that is, Riaz? Before I justify, I'm a dispenser at the moment, guys, all right? I know why they're going to get taken over. Riaz, do you know?
I'm not. I would imagine because it doesn't require as much. I think there's a foundational level of knowledge that is required for for a dispenser to do their job. I don't think it requires. I mean, I know you've told me there's the occasional interaction where you have to explain to a customer what the drug is or what the medication is and when to take it and whatnot. But I can see why it might be automated. But then again, I don't know why it's so high. 94% seems like surely there's more factors to or more features of the job.
Yeah. Okay. It's very interesting from an outwards perspective for someone who doesn't work in pharmacy to think that this does not surprise me at all. And I'll tell you why.
Okay.
Because now in the field of community pharmacy, now we're focusing on community pharmacy because that's where, dispensing, we have pharmacy dispensers usually working. And as well as that, we have hospital pharmacies who take on dispensers and even warehouses who take on dispensers as well. Each sector, particularly in hospital, and I have seen this firsthand, they have used technology to help and aid in the dispensing processes. Now, within hospital, I see a lot more pharmacy technicians and pharmacists. Okay, so within from the perspective of implementing a dispensing technology where it's able to effectively pick out the item, right? Cross-check it against the relevant prescription, do the relevant prescription checks against the item. Then from there, you label the item, okay? Then you leave it to one side. That is the job as a dispenser in a nutshell, but you also have to consider the fact that you might need to help out at the front. You might need to counsel the patient on a certain medication. There are other things to the job as well, but that's something the pharmacist can do if they weren't so intensively focused on accuracy checking, because you require a pharmacist to accuracy check ultimately, because you're checking over ultimately what has been dispensed.
Okay.
And you are preventing errors from taking place, because the pharmacist is the last point of call for them to then ultimately then check over the relevant basket that has been dispensed. You pick out the item, you have labeled the given item, you've signed it off as a dispenser, you've then left it in the box for then the pharmacist to then have a look over it. Okay, so that is why it's low skill in that sense, because you're just picking out the relevant, correct box. That's something a robot can do, and that's something a robot has proven to do efficiently and effectively time and time again. Okay?
Is there not a degree of understanding that is required of each and every drug. And therefore, if a patient were to come to you and say, you always get the odd patient who seems a bit confused or annoyed as to why they're taking the medication. They may ask you, what then happens?
A pharmacist can answer that query. A dispenser doesn't need to be there. And for the most part, a dispenser might not have the knowledge in place to answer that question.
Okay.
The qualification for a dispenser, I think it's like an NVQ level 2, which anybody can do, in fact. There's no undergraduate degree or anything involved in being a dispenser. It's just, I work as a dispenser at the moment. It's only because it's helping me understand not only the strength of drugs, but also have more of an idea as to the kind of drug combinations that you are likely to see. So seeing prescriptions frequently, understanding the law behind working in pharmacy, dealing with controlled drugs as a pharmacy student working as a dispenser is incredibly beneficial. But I can see why it is 94%. If you don't mind me asking, Riyesh, is it all right if you could try pharmacy techs?
Sure.
But before we go any further, what do you think pharmacy technicians could have?
Well, if you could, Joseph, quickly explain to people listening what their job requires, and then maybe you could go off that.
Of course, yeah. So pretty much the role of a pharmacy technician is ultimately a more of an in-depth understanding as to what drugs you're giving out, maybe possibly even helping out a patient who might come in with a query that a dispenser might not be ultimately able to resolve on their own, but they may require, a pharmacy technician who has spent slightly more time within their field. As well as this, the training time to become a pharmacy tech is significantly longer, and so it takes roughly around 2 years to become a fully qualified pharmacy technician, which you can undergo within the NHS, or you could become accredited, I believe, usually through the NHS, As well as that, they can also vaccinate people if they do the right training, but also they can, as well as this, go on to become what's known as an accuracy check technician and accuracy check prescriptions, where, let's say, a dispenser is dispensed and they then go over the prescription and accuracy check it, and then ultimately check if there are any errors, and then bag up the relevant items and then store them away. But in a nutshell, I feel like, again, the role of a pharmacy technician is also very prone to it being taken over by technology.
So would you say, personally, I think it would be less likely than
a dispenser.
A dispenser, yes.
But
let's find out then.
Now, hear me out. I feel like the role as a pharmacy tech needs to develop further, more clinically than it should, with respect to doing quite menial tasks like picking out items and dispensing them as well, because that's a large part of the work that pharmacy techs do, as well as that. But also from the respect of accuracy checking things and becoming like a technician and accuracy checking. To look at it from that perspective, again, AI can do that easily, because you are looking at a prescription and then you're looking at the items dispensed and then the label as well, and you're accuracy checking and checking if everything lines up in accordance with the prescription. Now that's something that technology can easily do as of this moment, but the implementation of it within the sector is not so good, let me just say that. But I think my prediction would be 70%.
Okay, based off what you've said, I think 70% seems like a good percentage. I'm going to say personally slightly lower, though. I still feel like it might be about 50. But I could be wrong. I probably am. Let's find out. Come on. Alright, give me 1 sec. For our pharmaceutical technician.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's really mad. Bear in mind as well, I don't think this is entirely accurate, but I think it would make a lot of sense. Because let me ask you this then, Vihash. If I were to set up my own pharmacy, very hypothetical, I would like to have someone who knows what they're doing. So to have a pharmacy technician would be good. The problem is is that the salary requirements of a pharmacy technician are, of course, going to be higher than that of a dispenser. They're not going to be on the same wavelength, because to become a dispenser is a lot less worker and intensive than to become a pharmacy tech. And of course, as a result, who are you more likely to employ in an automated pharmacy? Neither. You don't in a fully automated pharmacy, which has all boundaries covered. In the future of like a random community pharmacy, you will have a pharmacist or maybe two pharmacists, and then you will have, say, for example, patients who then have like a self-service area. Their prescriptions will be dispensed, as in just given to them. And if they have any queries or questions with respect to counselling, they will go to the pharmacist. And that is really kind of the projection in that sense. And any specialist service, whether that would be hypertension finding services, or like cholesterol checking, or flu jabs, vaccinations, all these sorts of different things, weight management strategies, non-pharmacological management of sleep, Botox, everything like that, all specialist services as well as that, are all going to be managed by pharmacists. And of course, I've said Botox, but again, that requires another level of qualification in order to do that as a pharmacist. But can you see where I'm coming from, Vihash?
Yes, yeah, and I'm surprised with this, but now that you've explained it, I think I understand it a lot more. Would you say then this is a good, I mean, I'm trying to polarize this as much, and probably just to round this off as well, would you say then technology replacing pharmaceutical jobs would be a good idea from both a customer perspective, or a bad idea?
Okay, solely focusing from the perspective of the patient experience and the quality of care that is provided, in the hypothetical situation that it is the systems that we have in place are incredibly efficient, the AI and machine learning that we also have in place as well to effectively dispense prescriptions and pick out the relevant items, and we have a pharmacist there who is ready to help the patient with anything that they need, it would improve things drastically. That would be a phenomenal change to how pharmacy works.
Okay.
Right? Which is a good thing, which is phenomenal. But the bad thing is that we're going to be losing people who are skilled in what they do, like pharmacy technicians, who I think are incredibly not given the credit that they deserve. Pharmacy techs.
Yes, yeah.
It's a 2-year course, they put a lot of effort into it, and it's not spoken enough about, particularly in pharmacy school, right?
Okay.
And with that being said, sorry, but what were you going to say? I'm dying to hear what you want to say.
I was waiting to just say that this, because there are of course 50,000 jobs that you could search up, we can link this in the description below, so you guys can have a play around with it. Like I said, you don't want to fully trust everything that you read, so just because you read that your particular job is going to be 100% or 0% at risk of being taken over, don't be swayed. Doesn't mean that you're not going to be able to get a placement into uni or into an apprenticeship for that job. But yeah, just have a play around with it. I think I'm going to have to as well, because it's quite interesting to see. From what I've tried so far, it looks like I'm really bad at estimating this, but it's fun. So is there anything you want to add on? We've gone down a huge rabbit hole with this.
We have, but we haven't done one thing. We haven't done this last thing that I'm dying to do, and I thought that you would have done by now. Type in pharmacist, VI. I want to know what this has in store.
Right.
Okay, now wait. Before we type it in, there are some disclaimers that I want to put out, okay? I think the role of the pharmacist is continually changing, and there are so many different schemes that are being put forward by the government and putting more stress and strain on pharmacies now more than ever before. Because we see this now, we have had a scheme introduced known as Pharmacy First, where any minor illness or ailments, where you go straight to the pharmacy, you don't go to your GP, where people used to do that, right? And I'm
Yes.
sure you got the impression from that impression before as well. Viyash, you would go straight to the GP if you had any queries,
Yes.
right? And personally, that's what I did also as well. I used to go straight to the GP if I had anything wrong or I felt anything wrong with me when I was younger, before I embarked on a degree to become a pharmacist. Now, I don't self-diagnose. I was going to say I self-diagnose. I don't do that. But you can see, pharmacists are now the first point of call wherever you now go. They will now triage or send you to the correct place wherever possible. But as well as this, there is also going to be bias involved in anything that I say. So take that into account and take everything that I say with a pinch of salt. And I'm very interested to hear what this has to say.
Okay.
So go for it, Viyash. Go on. Oh, wait. Predictions. What do you think?
Personally, I think it'll be much lower than the technician.
Yeah.
So, I mean, much lower, probably about 10%.
You think
like
10%? Okay, I think like 20%, yeah, something like that.
All right, let's find out. Oh, 1%.
Whoa, that's phenomenal. Wow,
That's good.
I'm really happy. Okay,
Alright,
we all know why. It's because of the clinical knowledge of pharmacists and what they have. And we all also undergo a 4 years master's degree, and then as well as that, we do a training year. So ultimately, we're doing 5 years of training to become a fully qualified pharmacist. And even at that point, it's lifelong learning. We're always learning new things. We're always developing ourselves. We can become what's known as an advanced specialist practitioner. We can become, pharmacists in the year now below me are now graduating with an independent prescriber, as an independent prescriber. So when they become a fully qualified pharmacist, they don't need to do 6 months to become an independent prescriber. They can do, they are independent prescribed. There is one last thing that I want to ask you, doctors.
Okay, that would be the last thing because we are.
That would be the last thing. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry. My apologies.
Like I said, we can. People listening, they can have a look around on their own, because this is not everything, of course. And it's not all the jobs. These are just the ones that we particularly are interested in. Now, doctors, I think, will be even less, if not 1%, because it takes so much.
6 years? 6 years of studying?
6 years, but also there's so much to becoming a doctor. The empathy side of things, laws, anything like that. 2%, higher.
Wait, what?
Like you're gonna have to. We have to be skeptical about this. We can't completely trust everything that we see. So we have really gone down into the rabbit holes with technology, robots, and all of that. Speculated, and we have had a bit of fun with this guessing game. It's not really a game, but you can see where I'm coming from this. Let's leave it there.
Yeah.
We can. Maybe we can go on, do this another time. Have a bit more, maybe even a part 3 much later down the line. But we will see. And is there anything you want to add before we end it?
No, that's really about it. Phenomenal. I really enjoyed this part 1 and part 2 to this podcast, and I really like the twist that we kind of given. This was Vihash's idea, by the way. Will robots take your job? Phenomenal. But to leave it there, guys, thank you so much for joining, and take care.
All right. Bye-bye.
Sweet.